Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining us today. And we welcome you to this digital forum titled Action Beyond Words, Forest Partnerships for Landscape Sustainability, that will be moderated by myself, Amos Amanugo. This session is organized jointly by the Global Landscapes Forum and the International Model Forest Network that will, throughout the session for most of the time, be referred to as IMFN. So when we say IMFN, you should know that it is the International Model Forest Network. And indeed, this session could not come at a more critical time when we know that there is a growing importance of forests globally, as a nature-based solution to several contemporary issues, both the material and immaterial, including climate, biodiversity conservation, land use, trade. We're talking about the bioeconomy, we're talking about livelihoods and many other things that are all struggling for the same forest resources. This sort of places forests at the center of multiple contestations and also exposes the forest sector to multiple opportunities for collaboration. So we can choose to see whether we want to see competition and contest, or we want to see the collaboration opportunities in the forest sector. And it is for these reasons that the approaches to managing forest resources, whether globally, regionally, or even locally, should no longer be seen in isolation, but rather approached participatorily to harmonize the various interests that I just mentioned a few seconds ago. And this digital forum will bring together diverse partnerships and forest stewardship approaches to sort of reimagine the future of forests. What does the future of forests look like in a rapidly changing environment that we are in today? And we will also, through this session, highlight how the various stakeholders in the forest sector can be harmonized, the various stakes in the forest sector can be harmonized through integrated and participatory approaches. Before we start, a final reminder that this session is translated in different languages. So please, you can choose your preferred language on the screen below the streaming window. Please note that some of our panelists will also be speaking in Spanish, and you can choose your preferred, to ensure that you choose your preferred language on the platform so that you can get the message as clear as possible. Quick to mention as we move forward, that this session builds up on the IMFN Global Forum that will be held in Canada in May, themed around forests, people, and planet. We know that these three different entities are highly interconnected. And now, to start this session, we will quickly take a journey to Philippines with Jan Vince Basinal, who is the 2024 Forest Restoration Steward. Enjoy and learn more about this work.
We focus on community-led approaches that center the ownership of conservation practices, including protection, agroecology, and assisted natural regeneration. We journey with community partners through capacity building, field research, project design, and on-ground implementation, integrating local cultural norms and practices. With the aid of other stakeholders and institutional supporters, we were able to establish a people-led program that restores not only the landscape, but also the people's sources of nourishment, livelihood, and security.
Over the next 5 years, we seek $30,000 in funding each year to protect and restore at least 10,000 hectares of forest land through our existing programs. Our goals include site expansion, mainstreaming land-based education, and establishing additional community tree nurseries, as well as shared facilities for seed saving, crop storage, and processing. This funding will also support our organizational needs for on-ground team members and partners, and it will enable us to organize knowledge-sharing events within the broader Central Panay Mountains key biodiversity area. Our intention is to establish a local conservation area through a community-led, multi-stakeholder approach.
Siyempre, diyan kami nagbahal. Ang nabugtawan naman, lupa ang ginaobra naman. Kung wala kami ti lupa, hindi kami mabuhi. Siyempre, wala kami ti produktuhan. Kung mamugon lang kami nga rigto, may amo ikaw. Kung sang ano lang ang masuhol ka, mabayad ka naman, amo lang to ang ma-income naman. Iba kita na nga may amon kita nga ginaobra. Daw maka ano gid kami kang amon mga produkto. Bahal gid nga bulig ka naman ang lupa.
Reimagining our relationship with shifting ecologies, challenging entrenched power dynamics and conservation paradigms. Instead of viewing communities and locals as helpers or secondary stakeholders, the goal is to empower them as primary agents of change. By filling the socio-economic gap and shifting away from climate doomsday narratives, we embrace the hope rooted in community, in collaboration and solidarity, finding our way amidst the current state of ecological injustice. Our approach to humanize conservation, integrating cultural perspectives alongside scientific research and pedagogy. We seek to enhance ecological resilience and foster a sense of shared responsibility for the ecosystem and the forest. And this story starts here, at home.
What an insightful video on the evidence of forest stewardship in Philippines. I think we can all attest in one way or the other, forest stewardship has increasingly become the way to go. And now we will quickly explore the urgency to protect our natural ecosystems, which have been deeply impacted in the recent years and are now facing unparalleled threats. And part of this we know are actually forests that are an integral part of these natural ecosystems. And the video we are about to watch highlights the importance of conservation and restoration efforts, demonstrating how collective action can lead to significant progress. Let's take a moment and just reflect on how we can all contribute to protecting our environment and ensuring a sustainable future for generations to come. And this is a role we all have to play.
Mi casa tiene árboles grandes y verdes. No te alcanza la vista para mirarlos a todos. Si respiras, entra aire puro a tus pulmones. Y si estás atento, hasta puedes escuchar música. En mi casa me siento fuerte. Nos sentimos fuertes, pero a veces dañan nuestros árboles, lastiman nuestra tierra, nos llenan de humo y ya no puedes respirar y la música se apaga. ¿Por qué vas a destruir algo tan lindo, tan perfecto? ¿Por qué quitarle la vida? No tiene sentido. ¿Vos entendés? Y cada año no aprendemos. Y se repite una y otra vez. ¿Pero te acordás que te dije que éramos fuertes? ¿Te acordás? Somos fuertes. Y vamos a luchar juntos por respirar aire puro otra vez. Mis árboles volverán a crecer grandes y verdes. Tu vista no alcanzará para contarlos a todos. Y cuando pongas atención, podrás escuchar otra vez la música y regresará la vida.
Well, what a wonderful source of inspiration from that video that sort of paints the picture of some of the pressures that local communities that are connected to forests face, but more importantly, also to paint a picture of how resilient and hopeful they remain in the face of these various pressures. And as we progress, as mentioned earlier, that this session is focused on forest partnerships for landscape sustainability. The IMFN, the International Model Forest Network, has demonstrated with a very clear blueprint that has been applied over 3 decades of the fact that participatory and partnership-based approaches to forest stewardship and governance actually yields tremendous results. That said, I have the pleasure to introduce to you at this moment Mr. Roger Villalobos, who is the president of the Latin American Model Forest Network and also a board of directors of the Tropical Agricultural Research and Higher Education Center. He will provide a background to the vision and the approach of the IMFN. What a wonderful opportunity it is to hear from the experiences and the evidence that has been crafted over 3 decades. I will pass it over to Mr. Roger Villalobos at this moment.
Bien, es un placer para mí poder compartir con el público parte de nuestra experiencia en lo que son las plataformas de bosques modelo, que son espacios sociales de colaboración participativa para la gobernanza de paisajes forestales. Y mi participación va a reflejar parte de lo que es el trabajo de la Red Internacional de Bosques Modelo, en particular desde la experiencia de la red que tengo el honor de presidir, la Red Latinoamericana de Bosques Modelo. Hablamos entonces de procesos sociales, de procesos ampliamente participativos, donde contamos con plataformas establecidas en territorios de todo el planeta, en el caso de mi red, particularmente en Latinoamérica, y donde nos acompañan también instituciones internacionales que apoyan esta labor de trabajo en red, de intercambio de conocimientos, de experiencias y de fortalecimiento del trabajo por la sostenibilidad en los paisajes. Hay muchas formas en las que se han definido los bosques modelo. Voy a apuntar el día de hoy que se trata de alianzas de colaboración entre una diversidad de actores clave de paisajes relevantes que representan diversidad de sectores económicos, diversidad de intereses, diversidad de valores, desde una perspectiva social, espiritual, desde una perspectiva económica, en relación con el manejo de los paisajes, de sus ecosistemas, de sus recursos naturales. Y estas alianzas permiten a estos actores identificar una visión común de lo que es el desarrollo sostenible en sus paisajes y trabajar para promover esa visión de desarrollo, para promoverla en sus paisajes, en sus comunidades, para promoverla con sus gobiernos locales y sus gobiernos nacionales, incidiendo desde las políticas nacionales y también en el ámbito internacional. Este concepto se originó en Canadá en la década de los 80, donde fue necesario atender varios conflictos sobre la forma de gestionar paisajes forestales. El Servicio Forestal Canadiense desarrolló entonces procesos de resolución de conflictos donde participaban diversos actores de los paisajes. Y esto derivó en mesas permanentes de resolución de conflictos que posteriormente evolucionaron a ser plataformas o acuerdos de gobernanza. Se conformó entonces y fue lanzado al planeta un programa internacional de bosques modelo desde el proceso de Río. Y para el 1995 ya se contaba con una secretaría de la Red Internacional de Bosques Modelo en Canadá. En nuestro caso, en Latinoamérica, hemos trabajado fuertemente en esta red desde inicios de los 90 y mi institución, el CATIE, es la sede de la Secretaría de la Red Latinoamericana. Hay un conjunto de principios que han sido claves para la consolidación de estas plataformas de gobernanza. Se trata de alianzas de diversidad de sectores, se trata de representar los principales sectores que tienen intereses sobre los recursos naturales en un paisaje. Se trabaja con una escala y ante todo con una visión y enfoque de paisaje. Hay un compromiso de todas las personas involucradas, de las instituciones involucradas con la sostenibilidad. Se procura construir procesos de gobernanza conforme a las dinámicas locales, pero son procesos participativos donde se adecúa la forma de tomar decisiones a las condiciones locales. Son procesos además voluntarios y que deben ser guiados por un programa de actividades bien planificado para garantizar su efectividad. Y debe además haber un compromiso con el trabajo en red. Se conforman redes locales, se conforman redes regionales y tenemos la red internacional, la red global, donde permanentemente procuramos el intercambio de conocimientos, de experiencias y la búsqueda de alianzas, de sinergias para el trabajo por paisajes sostenibles. La red cuenta hoy en día con más de 60 plataformas de gobernanza distribuidas en el planeta en 37 países y que tratan de incidir en la buena gestión de paisajes que cubren alrededor de 73 millones de hectáreas y donde viven 22 millones de personas aproximadamente. La red global está dividida en capítulos. En mi caso, formo parte del capítulo latinoamericano. Este espacio de aprendizaje, de intercambio, de experiencias de gobernanza ha permitido que la red internacional tenga presencia en diversos foros internacionales y que se vuelva un brazo ejecutor de las convenciones internacionales con participación de comunidades locales y a la vez que transmita experiencias y aprendizaje hacia los espacios de discusión internacional. En el caso de nuestra red latinoamericana, contamos al día de hoy con 32 plataformas de gobernanza funcionales distribuidas en 15 países que conforman nuestra red y que nos ha permitido ser un capítulo relevante de la red internacional. Para nosotros, un paisaje se define ante todo por su diversidad. Un paisaje representa diversidad de ambientes y ecosistemas, diversidad de actores clave en el territorio, diversidad de formas de tenencia, de derechos, de manifestaciones culturales, diversidad de actividades productivas y de intereses en torno a las mismas, diversidad social y cultural, pero todo esto dentro de un contexto de una identidad territorial que hace que un grupo de personas pueda encontrar alianzas para buscar la sostenibilidad a través de la identificación de ecosistemas, de sus funciones y servicios que son claves para la sociedad, y donde el bosque es relevante en el territorio, ya sea por su participación en la economía, en la cultura o por la funcionalidad de los ecosistemas. Y buscamos entonces una diversidad de actores que conforman parte de nuestras plataformas de gobernanza. Se trata de plataformas intersectoriales de participación voluntaria con alianzas público-privadas que son representativas de los intereses del territorio y ampliamente participativas. En nuestras plataformas vamos a encontrar representantes de gobiernos nacionales, de gobiernos locales, de ONGs, de organizaciones de base comunitaria, de grupos de mujeres, de hombres, de empresas, de diferentes tipos de grupos de base que se alían para buscar una mejor gestión de sus paisajes. Estas plataformas nos han servido para contribuir a través de las intervenciones en campo con grupos comunitarios a hacer vivos los acuerdos de las convenciones internacionales a través de acciones en campo. Nos han permitido mejorar y complementar el trabajo de las instituciones nacionales, de los gobiernos nacionales, mejorar y complementar el trabajo de los gobiernos locales o regionales, optimizar el uso de los recursos financieros, humanos y técnicos, tanto locales como nacionales, optimizando su aplicación en los territorios. Encontrar desde las capacidades en los territorios nuevos recursos y colaboraciones públicos y privados desde el ámbito internacional. Desarrollar visiones comunes de los modelos de desarrollo que queremos impulsar en los territorios y trabajar en los mismos. Entender que juntos somos más poderosos y efectivos en la búsqueda de la sostenibilidad y desde ahí contribuir, en mi caso, en Latinoamérica, a la construcción de la paz y el bienestar humano, que nos hace mucha falta en nuestra región. Hemos encontrado en diversos análisis que realizamos sobre nuestro quehacer que contribuimos de forma muy clara a varios de los metas de desarrollo sostenible acordados internacionalmente. Y en algunos estudios que hemos realizado en algunas de nuestras plataformas de gobernanza en particular, hemos encontrado, por ejemplo, procesos de forestería comunitaria donde las comunidades se dan cuenta que están contribuyendo de alguna u otra forma a todos los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible desde la gestión de sus paisajes. Uno de los temas con el que estamos fuertemente involucrados los últimos años es el de restauración. Y nuestra red en Latinoamérica es un socio técnico relevante de la iniciativa 20 por 20 de restauración para Latinoamérica, que suma voluntades para restaurar más de 52 millones de hectáreas y donde desde nuestra red aspiramos a contribuir con la restauración de alrededor de 1.6 millones de hectáreas y ser un referente de la restauración en nuestra región. Nuestra visión de paisaje nos permite tener una visión amplia de restauración, pero plenamente integrada con la sociedad. Aspiramos a que nuestras iniciativas de restauración sean ampliamente participativas y guiadas por las necesidades, los sentires y las capacidades locales, definiendo prioridades y métodos de restauración acordes a las necesidades de la gente en los paisajes, acordes a su priorización de servicios ecosistémicos clave y a la participación local, haciendo así más efectivas, mejor dirigidas las políticas y los proyectos de los gobiernos nacionales. Otro tema clave en los últimos años para nosotros es el tema del fuego, pero lo estamos enfocando desde una perspectiva de gobernanza del fuego. Va mucho más allá del control, va mucho más allá de la prevención. Queremos cambiar la forma en la que la sociedad ve el fuego en tiempos de cambio climático, donde se están exacerbando los incendios en nuestra región debido a las condiciones climáticas, entre otros aspectos. Pero el fuego es parte de nuestra cultura, de nuestras prácticas de manejo, de nuestras religiones. Entonces necesitamos transformar la visión que tiene la sociedad completa sobre la gestión del fuego y establecer plataformas de gobernanza enfocadas en una gestión adecuada del fuego, en aprender a vivir con el fuego en tiempos de cambio climático de una forma que nos permita mantener nuestros servicios ecosistémicos. Y hemos trabajado fuertemente en la formación de capacidades, en la construcción de acuerdos en esa línea, y tenemos ya ejemplos destacados de cómo las comunidades organizadas previenen el desarrollo de incendios y conservan bosques en áreas muy susceptibles al desarrollo de incendios. Otro tema clave para nosotros durante años ha sido la deforestación, que sigue siendo un problema en Latinoamérica, pero hemos encontrado cómo comunidades organizadas, como lo refleja esta imagen de la forestería comunitaria en Guatemala, donde vemos la gestión comunitaria defendiendo al bosque de la deforestación a través de una participación local, a través de la incorporación del bosque en las estrategias de vida de las personas. O lo vemos también en esta imagen, nuestro bosque modelo Amazonas Tapajós en Brasil, donde de nuevo la forestería comunitaria ampliamente participativa defiende el bosque de los procesos de cambio de uso, incorporándolos claramente en la estrategia de vida de la gente. También trabajamos en alianzas con sector privado para atenuar esos procesos de deforestación, como ocurre acá en Bosque Modelo Chiquitano en Bolivia, donde se hacen acuerdos con empresarios ganaderos para buscar sistemas productivos que eviten la deforestación y que construyan paisajes más sostenibles. Este tipo de actividades han sido fortalecidas los últimos años en colaboración con la Red Internacional de Bosques Modelo y con el gobierno de Canadá, que nos ha permitido canalizar recursos hacia varias de nuestras plataformas para fortalecer estos temas y trabajar y llegar a más actores en los paisajes. Hemos podido entonces formar capacidades en cientos de personas en toda la región. Hemos podido promover investigaciones científicas, formar profesionales con niveles de posgrado, realizar encuentros, hacer decenas de publicaciones sobre los diversos temas en los que trabajamos en la gestión de paisajes. Y nuestra red ha venido creciendo y fortaleciéndose. Y uno de los temas transversales a todo esto ha sido incrementar la participación de las personas jóvenes con toda su diversidad en los procesos de toma de decisión, en los procesos de gestión del paisaje y tratar de contribuir a construir equidad de género, que es un tema que en nuestra región todavía refleja enormes brechas e enormes injusticias, pero queremos construir la equidad de género desde la participación amplia de las mujeres en todos los espacios de gobernanza y de la gestión de los paisajes, con una participación cada vez más plena en la toma de decisiones. Es así como en esta red estamos viendo los paisajes como espacios de colaboración, como espacios para crear sinergias hacia el desarrollo de la sostenibilidad. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Villalobos, for sharing with us about the background of the IMFN, which is truly a testament of what participatory and partnership-based approaches can yield in terms of results in a sector that can easily often succumb to, competition for resources rather than collaboration. And a couple of things that I've picked up quickly that I want to mention among the many points that you made, I think strongly coming through is the recognition of the multifunctionality and diversity of the landscapes that we live in, the forest landscapes, and then the imperative to set up really good and efficient governance systems, to manage these landscapes and to accommodate the interests of the various actors in these landscapes. And also the emphasis on partnership, which is a very core thing that you mentioned that I know very shortly our panelists shall pick up on. And I do quickly reflecting on some of the points that you've mentioned in terms of partnerships coming up handy in resource mobilization, in building a social capital for action, in learning and knowledge and experience sharing and so on. And this is truly something that is noteworthy. And so we will now quickly move forward. We will watch a short video titled Action Beyond Words, 30 years of landscapes, partnerships, and sustainability in action. If you only had 1 minute, how would you describe the model forest approach without using words? Thank you very much. A picture is indeed worth 1,000 words. And that was a very wonderful video on how various stakeholders within, with various interests can come together to build multifunctional landscapes through forests. And this now ushers us into our very first panel of this session, a panel that is focused on inclusive, equitable, and adaptive governance. And we do recognize that at least many of us that have been in this space recognize that forest ecosystems are shifting very much, and so are the constantly evolving needs that are placed on them. And the question is, how can we actually respond? How can we respond rather than react to the changes that we are witnessing in the forest sector? This discussion, the discussion of this first panel, will explore how landscape governance approaches processes can be built in ways that are inclusive and promote equal participation of the various stakeholders while being responsive to the dynamic nature of the forests and the forest sector, including ensuring a common vision is realized. We will start with the brief reflections from our wonderful speakers on this panel, followed by a conversation, and we'll close with a quick interactive poll to hear your thoughts, those that are here with us in Bonn and also those that are joining us online, for you to share your thoughts with us as well. And so quickly, as we move forward, I will pass on the floor to one of our panelists, Nina. Could you briefly introduce yourself in about 30 seconds and tell us about yourself and work?
Saludos com todos e todas. Eu sou Nina Duarte, sou vice-presidente da Fundação Meimana. Nós outros trabalhamos pela regeneração, pela conservação do bosque modelo chocó-andino aqui em Equador. Vivo e trabalho nesse território. Me parece muito importante que nos acerquemos à terra, que estemos mano a mano com a gente para avançar nesses grandes desafios que temos agora. Muitíssimas graças por essa oportunidade. Espero poder compartilhar um pouquinho da nossa experiência do bosque modelo chocó-andino em Equador.
Thank you very much, Nina. I'll pass it on to Max. Over to you.
Hello, Amos. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Max Yamauchi. I'm from Brazil, but I'm based in Costa Rica, and I work for Eco Agriculture Partners, working as a project manager for integrated landscape management, innovations, and capacity strengthening. So, and I'm also, of course, part of the management team of the Latin American Model Forest Network. So it's great to be here and share some insights.
Thank you very much, Max. We have Sheikh Imran here as well. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. Namaste, salam to all of you. My name is Sheikh Imran. I'm from India. I'm the co-founder of an organization called Prakriti. We work with farmers to help them with livelihood, support them with agroecology. And I've worked for the last 2 to 3 years in Wayanad, in the Western Ghat region of India. So I'm currently the forest restoration steward for GLF, and we are working on conserving rare, endangered, and threatened tree species in the Wayanad region along with the community members.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, I will pass it on to Esther.
Yeah, thank you, Amos. Thank you, Jelle, for organizing such a wonderful forum. My name is Aster Gavrakostos. I am a senior scientist at C4 ICRAF. I love trees. I speak the language of trees, and I'm the founder of African Tree Ring Network. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther, for that introduction. One thing that I've also picked from all of our panelists now is such a deep love for forests and trees, but also the fact that they all have a connection to agriculture, which is sort of oftentimes comes across as a nemesis of the forest sector, which shouldn't be the case anyways. But to quickly start up on this panel, the word partnerships has surfaced a number of times so far. Based on your experiences, I will start with Max. Based on your experiences, why are strong partnerships and inclusive approaches key to successful forest stewardship, and how do they balance different interests and trade-offs? Considering that you work in a partnership-based environment, it would be good to get your insights in this space.
Should I start?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much, Amos. Yeah, I think one thing that history have teached us is that really siloed and sectoral approaches have failed or have been unable to really address the main structural and complex challenges that humanity and the planet faces, you know? And, you know, even good intentions within the sectors are not enough. We really need coordination. We really need integration and especially communication among these different stakeholders so that we really can understand where are the trade-offs and how we can minimize them to identify the opportunities for synergies and really avoid the duplication and overlapping of efforts and really to elevate efficiency and lower financial risks. And so why is it are partnerships so important? And I think I was planning to talk about something. I'm changing my move here. I would like maybe to share a really tiny experience that I think it's a really good example representative of the potential of these partnerships. And this experience comes from the Pantanal Model Forest, or they call themselves Pantanal Model Landscape, which is an amazing region in the Midwest of Brazil. So the Pantanal Model Forest, Model Landscape, is one of the most recent landscapes or model forests to join the Model Forest Network. And eco-agriculture partners, together with 1000 Landscapes Initiative and the Model Forest Networks, we've been supporting them in this initiating process in integrated landscape approaches, right? So back in 2023, and I'm speaking very fast because I know we have really short time and I wanted to share this. We've supported them in conducting one first workshop in integrated landscape management, where they gathered different stakeholders from the landscape and started the first dialogue on like the partnership and how they can start collaborating. So there was present like the people from the NGOs, people from the local communities, the government, even the mining company was there. And after a couple of weeks, a good colleague from, which is the leader convening this process, André Nunes, he have called me and we talked, and he said like, look, Max, it was really nice, the experience. And the community leader have told me that it was the first time that he had the opportunity to face meet the person from the mining company. It was the first opportunity of his life. And from one meeting, first meeting, and I'm going to conclude here, they have, after this meeting, reached out to each other and they have talked about like the opportunities together. And after one meeting, the mining company have agreed to provide clean water for the community because of water shortages and contamination and all these things. So I know it might look like a really tiny and small example, but I just wanted to highlight it as a, like from one meeting with communication, with integration, the first meeting have already resulted in like a solution for the community and the dialogue and the initiation of a really rich process that is now ongoing. So yeah, just to be very sharp here.
Thank you, Max, for keeping it very precise, but yet really in-depth there. You know, you quickly spoke about the need for coordination to avoid duplication. Also, you talked about resource efficiency, and it's good to know that good intentions alone are not enough. We need to work a lot more closely together. I will pass on the same question to Nina. You know, you have a background in research, you're a restoration practitioner, you're interested in, you have also an experience in organic agriculture and so on, you know, harmonizing these different, I understand in that space, there are different partners or stakeholders that you work with. And so the same question to you is, why are strong partnerships from your experience, you know, very key for successful forest stewardship? And yeah, over to you.
For me, right?
Yes.
Vamos. Thank you so much. Bueno, voy a hablar en español. Sí, me gustaría empezar diciendo, ¿no?, que todos los procesos potentes que tenemos aquí en el territorio del bosque modelo chocandino así como todas las diferentes categorías de conservación que tenemos acá, el bosque modelo, la reserva de biosfera, las áreas de conservación y uso sostenible, el corredor del oso, todas esas iniciativas salieron de la base, salieron de la idea de las personas, del interés de las personas, de la participación, ¿no? De los habitantes de ese territorio. Para nosotros es, bueno, luego, por supuesto, fueron siempre apoyadas por un consorcio, ¿no? De actores del sector público, privado, ONGs, la cooperación internacional, que deben hacer eso justamente, ¿no? Entender qué quieren las personas que habitan esos territorios, cuáles son sus visiones, sus reales necesidades y juntos articularnos para que esa visión compartida del paisaje se dé en prol de la conservación. Para nosotros es importantísimo promover la participación en nuestro territorio porque a pesar de que tenemos más de 60%, cerca de 60% del territorio cubierto por bosques en diferentes estadios de conservación, tenemos muchísima gente viviendo dentro de esos bosques y gran parte del territorio es propiedad privada. Entonces, son realmente personas, familias, comunidades que están tomando las decisiones in situ, que están manejando esos bienes comunes, el agua, la biodiversidad, el suelo, el bosque, para bien o para mal de la conservación. Y es por eso que nosotros hemos tomado como enfoque de conservación un modelo de conservación inclusivo y participativo, donde buscamos, y es o grande desafio, não, promover essa harmonização entre as necessidades humanas com as necessidades e os direitos da natureza. E essa ha sido nossa trajetória nos últimos 15 anos em território, tratando de entender, não, onde estão esses trade-offs, onde se chocam essas necessidades. Por exemplo, você mencionou a agricultura, não? Essa é uma das áreas que trabalhamos acá. La agricultura es un vector de la deforestación, siempre ha sido en toda América Latina, imagino en el mundo, y para llegar a la gente con la restauración, hemos estado trabajando con agricultura regenerativa, con restauración productiva, entonces es una manera de encontrar ese balance entre esas diferentes necesidades, ¿no? El modelo de conservación que estamos proponiendo no território, que venimos no, co-criando junto com a Mancomunidade do Chocondino desde 2014, tem que ter sentido para as pessoas, para que elas se apropriem. Eles têm que, a gente que está em campo tomando as decisões, tem que entender isso e para apropriar-se disso e levar isso à prática, ao dia a dia. Só assim vamos a lograr sostener esses processos de conservação de paisagem no tempo, e um tempo que não é um tempo administrativo de 4 anos, de una prefectura o algo así. Es el tiempo de la naturaleza, el tiempo de las generaciones, de las personas que crecen acá. Entonces, consideramos que esa participación, esa articulación de actores para promover la participación es importantísima para traer autonomía a las personas y que ellas puedan traer, aterrizar esa conservación en el día a día de ellas. Y bueno, creo que me queda el tiempo corto, no sé si tengo más, y sería eso un poco de nuestra experiencia. Gracias a ambos.
Thank you so much, Nina. Good to hear your experiences of the value of partnerships. You've talked about harmonizing, human and harmonizing the rights of nature, which is very important. We're talking about partnerships, but we only see it as partnerships among ourselves as human entities. And oftentimes we might fall prey to forgetting that we need to forge partnerships with nature. And you spoke about also, the value in terms of achieving a shared vision. You talked about people's interests and ideas that shape partnerships. But one of the most important things that I noted is also ensuring ownership of the landscape resources in these partnerships, because we are dealing with common pool resources here, and oftentimes it can easily fall to the tragedy of the commons where no one really wants to take responsibility. But indeed, if there are partnerships, there is an opportunity to facilitate ownership. I will quickly move to Shaikh Imran before I switch to Aster. Shaikh, you're a young agriculturalist and restoration practitioner. It's often easy to discount many times young people in these spaces. But I want you to share with me share with the audience your experiences of why it is not good to discount partnerships with this demography. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Talking about partnerships and inclusivity, I think in many of the landscapes across the globe, partnerships is not a if question, but when question. Sometimes in many of these landscapes, it is absolutely impossible to live in synergy with nature without the right kind of partnerships, not just with with also nature, as mentioned earlier. So I'll just give you a small example of how I started perceiving this because of my experiences. Because I was in Wayanad, which is a blend of different kinds of landscapes, tea plantations, natural forests, agriculture, mountains, and everything in just one landscape, right? So I used to work with farmers on conserving rice varieties, but because of extensive forest fragmentation, loss of forest cover, and all the things happen, human wildlife conflict that has gone up in the last few years. And this human wildlife conflict is not just restricted to the forest or forest dwelling communities, but eventually to farm and there's between man and animal. So this is when I realized that and also relationships, the kind of interconnectedness that all of these communities, organizations, and nature requires to able to tackle this drastic loss that we are currently seeing. So it is absolutely necessary that any kind of partnership or inclusivity that we're talking about is deeply centered around the community. It is led by community, and of it should also account for the community needs. And this community can include young people, indigenous peoples, and other local communities, and also the needs of wildlife that are present in the area. So it's important that we do this not just for action, but also for the livelihood and governance processes happening in these regions. So it's important that we not just look at the big partnerships between NGOs or the research institutes, but we also go down, scale down as much as possible, see how the communities that are actually impacted in this process, what do they need, what kind of partnerships they expect, or what kind of support or communication they expect, so that these communities who are on the front lines of the impacts of forest loss or human wildlife conflict or even climate change as a broad subject, and their needs are accounted. So we can't work in silos anymore. We can't work as NGOs or research organizations or communities. So we all need to work together. And for that, we need to start listening. And based on that, do these partnerships, right? So that we can also act in the best interests. For example, an area like Wayanad, which is so critical and vulnerable to these effects, but also has a huge influx of tourism, right? People coming in, which is also a driving factor in many of these. So how do we ensure this balance between something so private and public oriented like tourism, and something as complex and as community rooted as conservation and restoration, where there's so many other stakeholders involved. So it can only happen with communication, assessing the needs, and actually listening to people and listening to nature. And as a young person, I'm listening and I'm trying my best. As a community, we work together and our voices also out there.
Thank you so much, Imran. Really speaking for the communities with such authorities is really, really impressive. And I think indeed we have to start taking the partnership down to where the communities are, because that is actually where real change happens. And I will quickly now move to Aster. I know that very big interest in trees, agroforestry, and multifunctional landscapes. When you talk about multifunctional landscapes, you quickly know that diversity and lots of interests and claims of stakes. But yeah, I will quickly pass on the same question to you in terms of the value that partnerships have held in your work. Over to you.
Thank you, Amos. As the previous speakers, said that forests are more than ecosystems. They are social landscapes. They are lifelines for most people. So, but they are also contested spaces. Yeah. Conservation issue, livelihood, commercial interests intersect. From the technical standpoint, there is ecological, economic policy, and what have you. And they are also contested in terms of these three areas. There's climate change, there's biodiversity, there's livelihood. But trees, they can do all that. They are multifunctional. They are so powerful. They can address the climate and the biodiversity and the livelihood issue and what have you. So why not people with different interests, with different, background should come together also to address the challenges what we have. So I think it's very important to create a space, so that people can bring their values, their needs, their knowledge to the table. So that creates cooperation, but also co-ownership. And most important, about trust. Trust building is very important, and trust takes time with people. And trust takes patience, transparency, and commitment. So this is why, and it lasts long. So what inclusive partnership bring is adaptive capacity. When you say about inclusive partnership, it's dynamic. It's the ability to respond to change, to learn, to integrate different types of knowledge into decision making. So balancing interests, of course, is so difficult. It's not easy. But by bringing this, creating space, we can have tools to have these hard conversations, to recognize power dynamics, to build decisions that reflect real life complexity. So yeah, that is really critical.
Thank you so much, Aster, for keeping it on point and quite brief but deep at the same time. I will still, come to you right now in one way or the other. All the panelists have emphasized the value of partnerships. We often know that some groups and forms of knowledge get discounted when we're forging partnerships. And you have already highlighted quickly these difficulties, including trust building and transparency. I just want to pick out from you, maybe in 1 minute or so briefly, as I move to other members of the panel, what steps are being taken to include marginalized groups and integrate local knowledge and leadership, in these multifunctional landscapes of forest management, biodiversity conservation, and restoration. You already mentioned this, and Imran also highlighted these particular groups and the value of engaging them. What are some of those practical steps that you see sort of to facilitate trust building and to include them in these partnerships?
All right.
Aster, yes.
So yeah, I can give you just practical examples that have been, working in a project. I had the opportunity to work with indigenous communities in Ethiopia. It's a World Heritage Site where it's recognized because of its traditional knowledge, and they kept the forest for centuries. And they think that actually, forests, trees, they are mediators between human and God. To that extent, they really worship trees. But those communities have been protecting these forests, as I say, bizarre. Now they are facing growing challenges with market change in tradition, climate change, and what have you. So I have this project. So to better understand and address the challenges, we established a multi-stakeholder platform to bring together different voices, policymakers, and different sectors in a platform. And we had discussions and all that, indigenous communities. And one thing that I was really surprised was, and we asked them to list their challenges. And one of the challenges they have is population pressure. I didn't expect that from them, to say population pressure is number one. We ask them to list the challenges. But in sectors that we call, we gathered, we don't have a sector from the health sector. So from that discussion, and then next time we also brought this health sector into this platform to address this issue of population pressure, because they can teach about population control. And our second issue that they faced was the intergenerational gap. He was talking about the youth. But then they told us many young people see their parents' traditional way as outdated. Yeah. they associate them with poverty and struggle. And as a result, this deep ecological wisdom that they get this UNESCO heritage recognition is being, losing it. So it's very important to have this inclusive approach that young people have a seat at the table. And we are also creating green jobs, organizing youth, and also establishing living labs in their farm, bringing people, having these sensors, electronic dendrometers, and what have you, so that young people can be interested also in the forests and the farms. And that this is not really outdated, but it's also modern and sexy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aster. Just a quick one. I will pass it on to Max, and then we will come back to Nina and Imran. Picking it from there, indeed, one core thing that I picked up is we need to open channels of conversations, where we can actually make decisions and engagements, not based on assumptions, but actually based on the outcomes of conversations we have with these marginalized communities and bodies of knowledge. I will quickly move to Max. You're managing, you're part of a very big project. There are 1,000 landscapes for 1 billion people, and also part of this, the eco-agriculture partners, where there is a lot of partners. Same question to you is what steps, how are you working around, including marginalized groups and integrating local knowledge in that space, and also taking into account local leadership?
Yeah, thank you very much, Amos. And I think I will try to be very quick, but in the Latin American Model Forest Network, there are many different really interesting examples on how these marginalized or vulnerabilized groups have been approached and included in this process. I could recall some of them. We don't have enough time, but looking at Nina here, they have an amazing initiative there, restoring local knowledge on non-conventional edible plants, which is really an amazing process where they've been recovering knowledge from communities, from women leaders on food that had been forgotten, right? We have experiences from the ACOFOP in the northern Guatemala region of Petén, where women have been leading or having a really strong role in non-timber forest products, in community forest management processes, which is amazing. Also in the Ileia Baiana in the south of Bahia in Brazil, there are amazing, really interesting projects being led with landscape restoration, including indigenous peoples, where they've been restoring or working in the reconnection of these indigenous groups with nature, with the forests, and including their knowledge and using their species and of course considering all these aspects. But I think just to conclude, I think the greatest potential is where Aster have mentioned, is like when these groups are starting to be included in governance. Really, they start to participate beyond the scope of project cycles or specific areas of land, but really start to talk about their future and really start to, participate in planning processes where they define and put their opinion and inputs on these processes. So these are also happening, but we still want to work even more on.
Thanks a lot, Max, for picking on from what Aster said, but also just connecting it to the work that Nina is doing in some way. And so I will immediately pick up Nina to build up on what you've said, in terms of what they're doing. Nina, if you could keep it very brief, maybe a minute or so, just to build up on what Max has said in terms of how you, mainstreaming marginalized groups and integrating local knowledge. As we finish off with Imran, over to you.
Thank you, Amos. Pues el Socondina es un territorio de redes. Ya tenemos la red de bosques de escuela, red de jóvenes de Chocondino, red de mujeres de diversidad. Somos parte de la red latinoamericana de bosque modelo, la red de guardianes de semilla, la red de forestería análoga. Y mucho más, si queremos tener redes, ha sido un proceso súper orgánico de creación de esas redes, pero esas redes son importantísimas para promover la representatividad de esos grupos, muchas veces marginalizados, como mujeres, jóvenes, en los procesos, ¿no? Entonces, ellos, siempre que hay eventos, asambleas, reuniones, ¿no es cierto?, talleres, se les invita a essa representatividade. E eles vêm, nossas mulheres vêm a representar 50 que estão a mais, 50 mulheres mais que estão atrás, não? Então, essas redes han sido muito importantes para promover essa participação, trazer a visão desses grupos, não, de los jovens, sobretudo, a que queremos para esse território, como vamos a gestionar isso en el tempo, não é certo? Pero también ha sido muy importante para crear masa crítica, porque los temas que están siendo discutidos, debatidos en la sociedad, los problemas del territorio, los trade-offs, todo eso se discute también dentro de esas redes, ¿no? Entonces se va creando una masa crítica que va a ir transformando las realidades. Y solo para terminar súper rápido, a criação dessas redes ha sido também originada por um processo de fortalecimento de identidade territorial. Isso ha sido realmente, com toda a participação, todo ha sido por essa identidade que hemos criado há 14 anos, desde 2014 que venimos trabalhando, que é Chocandino. Criamos um nome, uma identidade, uma narrativa para pensar juntos esse território. Graças a Deus. Perdão que não há tempo.
Thank you, Nina. I like how you started emphasizing by networks from the start, and it really shows the power of building social capitals, which is perhaps one of the core forms of capitals that we can have at local community level, to start to create the change that we want to see beyond other forms of capital. I will now quickly pass it on to Imran. In terms of just quickly in a minute or so, just wrap up how you are working with the marginalized communities and bringing in this space local knowledge that you emphasized earlier on. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just close off with a very small example of the region that I work in. So there's a temple that is supposedly 4,000 years old, and the local communities over there believe a lot in that temple. And they had a revolution a few years ago when the temple deity told them that you're not allowed to cut any trees in this region. So what started with this revolution about 15, 20 years ago led to the community planting multiple native trees in that area. And this got picked up by local NGOs and forest departments. And they started supporting these communities. And now currently it is a huge, thriving sacred grove with the temple in between that people visit every day. They see all these native indigenous trees growing over there. So what started off as a small belief is now a multi-stakeholder engagement that is centered around the community, and these community members are also invited to different sacred groves or different plantations being done by the forest department as an example to teach and lead the process. So you can see, not just recognizing traditional knowledge is important, but giving the platform and the agency to the communities from where this traditional knowledge is emerging is equally important. And they can lead the change with the enabling ecosystem and the network effect that we have been talking about.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Imran. Yes, you have said that we should learn to move beyond just recognizing these communities and recognizing their knowledge to actually mainstreaming them in the space. With that, I will indeed say thank you to our very wonderful panelists for sharing such great insights about, the imperative of inclusive, equitable, and adaptive governance, and in forest resources management, of course. And indeed, in times where capital and power imbalances can significantly, shift the stakes of various actors in the forest sector or forest ecosystems, you have shown us that not discounting any stakes, including that of the marginalized and local communities, is critical for achieving the landscape approach through forests. And I will say thank you once again for your wonderful insights. Thank you, Esther, Imran, Max, Nina, and Thank you very much for sharing your experiences in this space. And now quickly, we will shift to our audience. We know that we also have a very large audience that is joining us both here in Bonn and online. We're sharing a Slido link. A Slido link has been shared. We would like you to share with us. The questions are there already. Quickly, what you believe is the main challenge to achieving effective integrated governance in forest landscapes. And we have already had some here, but it would be good to have that from you. And then, yeah, as we move forward, your thoughts. Thanks once again to our wonderful panelists. Our question is, what do you believe is the main challenge to achieving effective integrated governance in forest landscapes? We have a QR code there and the link has been shared. It would be good to get your experiences in this place as well. Yeah, it's really coming in. I am seeing a number of responses that are coming in there as challenges. I see, monitoring surfacing there as a challenge. We're seeing accountability and transparency being a very major issue. We're seeing powerful actors coming in the space. And indeed, as mentioned earlier on, nowadays, power imbalances and capital can shift a lot of things. We see economic interests coming in, while really valuable and viable at the same time, some of these can sometimes override the social and ecological interests. Accountability and transparency is coming up really, really big. Yeah, keep the responses coming through. Now, as we move forward into our second panel, this afternoon, wherever you are, morning or evening, is really about local initiatives and policy alignment. And following the wonderful insights shared by the first panel on inclusive, equitable, and adaptive approaches to forest governance, we can now turn our attention to focusing on how we can harmonize local initiatives and policy alignment. We know that global forest and landscape challenges often start, as discounted local issues which sort of coalesce together towards larger scales. But the question that it leaves us with is, how can we position the local initiatives to sort of unlock positive tipping scales globally from these local initiatives? And so our second panel will give us an insight on strengthening the alignment between locally led initiatives and global commitments, both by examining how global policies can better support the local efforts and also how local initiatives can inform and enhance global strategy for more effective implementation. This could not come at a better time as we look forward to COP Belém. Please also note that some of our panelists might speak in English, in Spanish, so ensure that you have chosen your preferred language on the platform. And quickly at this point, I will give the opportunity to our panelists that are here with us. I know that we have Roberto, we have Christine, we have Tony and Laura. I will go in that order and quickly pass it to Roberto to introduce yourself and tell us about your work, as brief can be. Thank you.
Ok. Muchas gracias, Amos. Es un placer estar en este panel. Soy Roberto Vides Almonacid, director de la Fundación para la Conservación del Bosque Chiquitano en Bolivia. Trabajamos en el bosque modelo chiquitano, el bosque modelo más grande del planeta y uno de los bosques secos tropicales más diversos y que se encuentra en gran peligro. Y es un gusto compartir las experiencias de más de 20 años en el territorio. Muchas gracias, Amos.
Thank you, Roberto. Quickly, I'll also pass it to Christine to hear your introduction and about your work briefly. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I am Christine Zambrano from Karaod Watershed Model Forest, Bohol, Philippines. So I work as a watershed development officer in the organization in the model forest. So I really engage in project implementation directly to the ground. So good evening, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much for keeping it brief. I will pass it on to Laura before I come to Tony. Laura, a quick introduction of yourself and what you do.
Thank you so much, Amos. My name is Laura Mkwana. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm the coordinator of GLFX Nairobi, a local chapter of the Global Landscape Forum. At GLF, we promote landscape restoration in our landscape, working with several community groups such as youth, women, and faith actors.
Thank you so much, Laura, for keeping it that brief. And lastly, our last panelist, last but not least, Tony, over to you.
Thanks, Amos. Thanks a lot. It's really a pleasure to be here with all the audience and the colleagues and to learn a lot of things in this webinar. And I'm a forest engineer. I'm here on behalf of Tuscany Region Administration, which manage the Mediterranean Model Forest Network Secretariat since 2019. And so I am very happy and honored to represent 40 model forests in our Mediterranean basin. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Tony, for keeping it brief. It is indeed a pleasure to be among foresters. It always is very refreshing to know the people that are working to save the planet. And now diving into the subject of this panel, we know that policies with functional and efficient governance structures can be a game changer when we are looking at driving forest and landscape sustainability. Just quickly, starting with Roberto and then moving on to Christine, and in that order, from your experience, Roberto, how can policies better support and scale participatory forest initiatives with, while linking the local actions to the national and global strategies? Over to you.
Muchas gracias. Es una pregunta muy compleja. Ustedes vieron el video de la niña que decía, somos fuertes frente a los incendios, y eso refleja una realidad en la colisión, en las contradicciones de las políticas públicas, que algunas van directamente a fomentar la conservación y el manejo sostenible de los bosques, y otras que se contradicen en esas políticas públicas. Bolivia, al igual que Ecuador, tiene en su constitución política del Estado a la naturaleza como un sujeto del derecho y no como un objeto del derecho. Por lo tanto, hay una serie de políticas que se derivan y acciones muy favorables para la gestión sostenible de los bosques. Sin embargo, hay otras políticas que van en contra de ello, avasallando las tierras de producción forestal permanente y dando tasas elevadas de deforestación y de incendios. ¿Cuáles son las oportunidades que tenemos en lo que es el bosque modelo chiquitano, nuestra experiencia en una región de más de 20 millones de hectáreas del bosque seco tropical que está fuertemente impactado por el cambio climático? Es acciones de conservación, de restauración y de mejoramiento de los medios de vida de las comunidades locales. En nuestra experiencia, el poder corregir esas distorsiones de las políticas públicas contradictorias a una escala local es fortalecer y empoderar a los actores locales en sus capacidades de incidencia, en sus capacidades de diálogo, en sus capacidades de, frente a esta colisión que genera conflictos socioambientales, cómo poder manejarlos y prevenirlos. En nuestra experiencia y con apoyo de algunos programas como el Servicio Civil para la Paz de GIZ de Alemania, que venimos trabajando muchos años, y con otros aportes y otras instituciones, ese fortalecimiento contribuye a ello. En el tema específico de restauración, ahí sí podemos encontrar grandes oportunidades de alinear lo que son las grandes metas globales, los compromisos del 20 por 20, por ejemplo, pero también con las iniciativas y los intereses nacionales y subnacionales y locales de restaurar. ¿A partir de qué? ¿A partir de con quiénes? Con los actores locales, autoridades, sectores privados, comunidades indígenas. Es allí donde podemos encontrar convergencia en estas contradicciones de las políticas públicas que, por un lado, promueven la gestión sostenible del bosque a escala de paisaje, pero por el otro lado generan estas, diríamos, estos marcos de alta deforestación y cambio de uso del suelo. Eso es, en nuestra experiencia, fortalecer de abajo hacia arriba las voces y las capacidades de diálogo y de negociación de los actores locales.
Thank you very much, Roberto, for that insightful knowledge and experience that you've shared on how policies can better support and scale participatory forest initiatives. Before I quickly go to Tony, I will first speak on Christine. I know that you work in watershed development. You work with a lot of NGOs, with the coalition of partners. I will like to have your take on how you are actually working to ensure that policies better support and scale participatory forest initiatives. We know that there is a lot of policy entry points there, given the coalitions that you're working with. I'll pass on the question to you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. No, before.
I'll start with Christine quickly.
Please, Christine.
Yes.
It's me. So we're talking on how policies. Okay, in Karaod Watershed Model Forest, Philippines, where I am working with. So, based on our experience, we have shown initiatives deeply connected with government institution that have a unique advantage, not only securing support, but also shaping more responsive and grounded environmental policies. So I think the first is we have gaining strategic support through alignment. Okay. By working closely with the government, where because our organization is coalition of government agencies working together, including academia, including the people's organization, including the people's organization in the watershed area. So gaining strategic support through alignment. So we have to see it that alignment of our it should be aligned with the government directives. Then the second one is creating a feedback loop for smarter policy. That proximity of government stakeholders has also allowed us to provide real-time feedback and data from the ground. So this is very crucial on crafting policies really that are adaptive, inclusive, and based field realities. So building trust, legitimacy, and long-term partnerships. So in close really for us in Karaod is that we share experience with global peers like this. and really not just about access to resources. It's about building bridging between local actions and policy transformation. So for us in Karaod, is living proof is the community, the government, collaborative with shared vision and mutual respect, that we can shape policies that are not being environmental sound, but also socially just and resilient.
That's really impressive. You've spoken about, how government comes in, how policy comes in. I would like to request Tony to quickly build on that. Tony, I know that you've had a background in SFM, in public and private sector, and also in the CSO world, and stretching a little bit towards academia, because I see that you've had this technical training, that you've offered in forestry and in sustainable forest management. And so the quick question that I have for you is, it's just the same question, how policies can be better aligned to support and scale participatory forest initiatives, considering your rich background in having worked across these different stakeholder groups. Over to you, Tony.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question to answer because, as I said before, I am here representing the different mother forests in the Mediterranean, and so in 11 countries, and so maybe that for every countries we have to answer a different response, but what we share is the model forest approach. And so in order to align which is the most important challenge that we have now, because the international level, the higher level about policies, about every challenge that we have, climate crisis and biodiversity and so on, and also to stop the population in the rural areas, because another very important point. So I think that the model forest approach, I can give just 2 examples regarding this alignment, because the first one regarding the Morocco model forest, the IFRAN model forest, and another initiative model forest in Mid-Health, and where in the mountain of Atlas they had a very interesting connection for a restoration project, where thanks to the IKI funds of the German Climate Agency, in collaboration with the FAO, the Forest and Landscape Restoration Mechanism, they put in place a restoration approach where they merge the innovation, the research, the innovation of the research of the university and the traditional ancestral knowledge, the AGDAL system, where in this way they not only have the involvement of the communities or the local communities, but for a very high level objective, the restoration with the Paris Agreement, they put in place at the local level a traditional way to face this kind of issue. The other one regards the Montagna Fiorentina model forest in Tuscany, Italy, where after the COVID-19, the pandemic, we know that all countries try to have a sort of regeneration of communities, and it was and it is an important objective. And so the Montagna Fiorentina model forest put in place a project regarding to design and to make 4 forest therapy trails codified with the National Research Council, involving the different kind of categories like social cooperative, environmental guides, municipalities, forest farmers and forest enterprises, and so on. And they make this project in order to respond to needs of the whole community, not only for the model forest, but to to the need of the national level or European level or world level.
That sounds really
Thanks.
impressive. It's interesting to see how, you harmonize these different, actors in the same space and sort of draw that connection with policies to ensure that they actually do not discount, but rather support locally led, participatory forest initiatives. I will quickly pick up on Laura before I take another round, which will unfortunately have to be our last round because of time. Laura, you earlier on mentioned, we know that you have this background in stakeholder engagement and as a specialist in that area, and you're also working in restoration as a restoration practitioner. It sounds sometimes easier said than done when we talk about, mainstreaming policies to sort of support and scale participatory approaches. From your experience, how can policies better support and scale participatory actions, linking local, national, and global strategies and spheres of action? Over to you, Laura.
Thanks a lot, Amos. When I think about how policies can better support participatory forest management, I think two things come to mind. Number one, we need we need incentives. And by incentives, the two that come to my mind right now is benefit sharing with the local communities that are engaged in such kind of initiatives. So we need benefit sharing with them. We also need to secure their rights to their forests, because in this context, I'm talking about maybe public forests. And if you can give Kenya as an example, we have that provision in our Forest Conservation and Management Act, where local communities, these are forest adjacent communities, through community forest associations can be granted some rights to use the forests and access them and manage them in some ways. So we really have to secure their rights to the forests, and then we also have to give them benefits, have benefit sharing agreements with them, because that has been a challenge in Kenya for a long time. Yes, these communities are taking care of the forest, but then they've never been able to have an equal share, or rather a good share of the benefits. So this has changed because now there's a benefit sharing regulations under the Act. And then when we come to the whole aspect about how we can link local initiatives to these international, the Rio conventions, I think it's really important that local initiatives, and I'm also speaking from the perspective of a restoration practitioner as the coordinator of JLFX Nairobi, we need to really ensure and make a deliberate effort to understand and know what are these national priorities when it comes to the Rio conventions. And we need to make an effort to align with them. We also need to ensure that at the end of the day, we're participating in policy-making processes, like the public participation processes around forest development of some of these policies. And I'll give the example of what JLFX Nairobi has done. So in Kenya, yes, we have several strategies that are guiding forest and landscape restoration. That is the Kenya National Landscape Ecosystem Restoration Strategy. And this aims to restore around 10.6 million hectares of degraded lands in Kenya. And this is also, of course, forests are a big priority when it comes to that. So at the end of the day, we have aligned ourselves to that strategy, and this strategy has a restoration monitoring framework. So we have ensured that the indicators in this framework are what we're using to monitor our project, specifically one project that we're conducting in an urban forest in Nairobi called Lolua Forest, just trying to align and ensure that at the end of the day, we can be able to report based on this national document. The other thing is, I do recognize that sometimes it's hard for local initiatives to be part of policy-making processes, but some of the things that we've seen are effective is just being part of networks, being part of forums that are advocating for policy, and that way, once these things come up, you're able to participate in them. So that's all I can say for now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Laura, for that. You already picked up on a very interesting question that was coming up next. In the interest of time, I will. We know that we have a lot more sessions that are coming up that also need to use this space. But in the interest of time, I will start from where you stopped and maybe take the reverse way back, picking up from Tony. Tony, already Laura mentioned the Rio conventions in this space. And we know that the SBSTA's, the SBSTA sessions are coming up in Bonn very soon. We have, the COP Belém coming up ahead. And if, as we conclude this panel, if in 1 minute or so, you could just share with us maybe a parting shot on what's needed for forestry research, policy, and action looking forward to COP and the next decade of action, that would be very much appreciated. Over to you, Tony.
Yeah, it's a very complex and long answer about this kind of objective, but maybe that it could be also very simple, because I think that we have to underline what every speaker said in this webinar, because we need to start from the local level to arrive at a very to have an overview of the local level of the local initiative to create or to have a very effective policy, and so also to satisfy the objective that we put with the Rio and all the other conferences, the next one in Brazil. And so I think that we have also to move in a very simple direction to focus in the well-being of communities and the planet, and maybe that we have to left a little bit behind the priority of finance. So I think it's not so easy, but I think that we have to focus in this direction to have some results.
Thank you so much for keeping it brief. Indeed, if we focus, I think if we focus on the well-being of communities, we definitely are likely to also have a shot at the well-being of forests and ecosystems. I will quickly pass it to Christine in 1 minute. Christine, if you could just quickly share with you your thoughts on what's needed for forestry research, policy and action, looking at COP Belém, and then we will sum it up with Roberto. Thank you, Christine.
Okay, so in behalf of Karaod Watershed, where I am working, where I'm working with, so I think first is we've mentioned on localized inclusive forestry research. So because forestry research must evolve, so it cannot remain siloed in academic journals and pilot labs. So I think we need research that is accessible, that answers community needs, and that includes the voices of women, the youth, the indigenous people. And this is not just ethical, it's effective. The second one is that the policy that reflects ground realities. So national and global policy frameworks must draw wisdom from the ground. So in Karaod, policies have been shaped through intermunicipal collaboration. So these efforts were only successful because policies were co-created, not imposed. The third one that I try to point out is that sustained investment in ecosystem restoration. So short-term projects cannot deliver long-term impact. So in Karaod, has benefited from short donors programs and government funding. But for continuity is a constant challenge. We know that. So we call for a financing mechanism that are stable, community-driven, performance-based, and through ecosystem service incentive, climate finance, or community enterprise development.
If I quickly come in there, you made a wonderful point. I know that we're short for time, but you made a wonderful point really about, you've made wonderful points, but particularly I want to pick the point on sustaining investments in ecosystems. And I think this is a very good opportunity to sort of unlock the nature economy, considering how the global financial architecture, traditional development cooperation and policies are shifting. now, I think it is indeed a very critical time to sustain investments in landscapes. I will now pass on to Roberto. I picked Roberto last because I know that the COP Bellum is coming in your neighborhood in Brazil. And so I would want you to send 1 or 2 messages, to COP Bellum in terms of what is needed for forests to be integrated as part of the climate agenda. If you could keep it brief, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. En línea de lo que mencionó Aster y también Tony, las acciones en terreno deben estar integradas, no solamente alineadas a una de las convenciones, biodiversidad, cambio climático, mejoramiento de vida en las comunidades. En nuestra experiencia, en 2 ejemplos, uno que trabajamos con las comunidades indígenas con apoyo de Canadá y de otras fuentes, de generar cadenas de valor basadas en la agrobiodiversidad, es decir, en sus producciones, sus cultivos tradicionales y en los recursos que tiene el bosque, en este caso el bosque modelo chiquitano, permite no solamente mejorar o dar oportunidades para mejorar las condiciones de vida, pero sí también para restaurar y conservar. Y con ello, tener mayor capacidad de adaptación al cambio climático. Pero eso es una parte. En áreas tan extensas como el bosque modelo chiquitano, es trabajar con el sector productivo privado y con un enfoque de paisajes productivos protegidos. Eso también implica trabajar con producción sostenible, conservación, restauración, a una escala de paisajes generando, diríamos, piezas de un rompecabezas para tener mayores oportunidades de conectividad, funcionalidad y por lo tanto de adaptación al cambio climático. Por lo tanto, el marco global de las convenciones, como va a ser también el de la COP30, deberíamos ir hacia adelante en buscar ese marco general que pueda percolar en las políticas públicas de los países y a escala local, que promueva la integración de las mejoras de los medios de vida en comunidades más vulnerables, la producción sostenible, la seguridad alimentaria, hídrica, la conservación y la restauración bajo un enfoque de soluciones basadas en la naturaleza. Ese debería ser el mensaje hacia la COP30.
Thank you very much, Roberto, for these wonderful messages. Looking forward to COP Bellum. Sincere apologies, time has not been our friend. Indeed, it is a very insightful and enriching conversation, and hopefully we can continue these conversations and even build beyond this forum, moving towards other forums that will come across the road, and also other knowledge sharing platforms that will eventually come. And I think the conversation should definitely continue. And with that, I can say that we've come to the very end of our panel, our second panel that really focused on local initiatives and policy alignment. And thank you very much, our panelists, Roberto, Christine, Tony, and Laura. Definitely look forward to continuing these conversations in the future. And now in the same spirit, also, I would like to invite you, as I mentioned earlier on at the start of this session, that this is a teaser and it leads up to the IMFN Global Forum that will happen in May in Canada with the theme Forests, People, Planet. And I think that is also another space where we can take these conversations and even dive a little bit more deeper with the audience that will be in that space. With all this, I say thank you once again to our panelists, and thanks to our audience for keeping in this space with us. As we conclude, we are going to quickly share a video from one of our community leaders to wrap up this session. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Adil Katalino, Bacuramin Kasaruga, Basengat Kajubata, Arus. Greetings from Kalimantan. My name is Emanuela Shinta. I'm the founder of Ranawelum Foundation and representative from GLFX Kalimantan. And I belong to Dayak Maanyan community groups, the first people of Borneo, the stewards of the island, and guardians of its 140 million years old rainforest. And right now behind me, as you can see, this is the wetland, peat forest ecosystem that we have been trying to protect. Facing a rapidly changing world, we are surprised, yet we never back down. While the policy made on the conferences and on the high-level decision-making tables, we are the ones that stand on the ground, live in the forest, and with all of our might have been trying to keep the forest intact. While this conversation has been going on for decades, I believe this time is crucial. If we want to do it right, like saving the forest, tackling climate change, healing the planet, I believe that we have to do it in the sense of urgency. We better act like it has to be done now or never. Here is my message to the global communities. First, we need to accelerate the effort of reducing the gap between policy and practice through inclusive dialogue and decision-making process that includes the voices of the local communities. Second, we need to strengthen the collaborative partnership between forest communities, global partners, and also youth leadership, which is a driving force in the restoration movement. And then the last one is for international network or organizations to provide a meaningful support to the local stewards of the forest, such as capacity building, resources, or even finance, so they can build their own resilient communities in their own local context without being imposed to the new external solutions. These conversations and collaborations will be continued at the International Model Forest Network in Canada next month, where I will be joining in person. So I encourage you to come, attend the event, and participate as well. That's all from me for now. Thank you so much and see you in Canada.